There was an election in Germany a week ago. Listen with tenterhooks sharpened to whether Megan and Konrad can remember much about it. Is Germany about to be ruled by its most feared authority, the traffic light? Is Franziska Giffey going to ignore the million people who voted to socialize housing? And why do younguns love the FDP so much? So many questions, only one Megacan to help us through. Crack it open.
Hello everybody, it's Megan's Megacan again. I'm Megan, I'm here in Berlin with ex-Berliner magazine and Konrad Werner. Hello Konrad.
Hello.
It's the weekend. It's sunny.
And it's just us again.
It is, which is, sad because we don't have a guest, but also nice because I get you all to myself.
Oh.
Been quite the week in German politics, hasn't it? It was the biggie.
Yeah, weirdly, our podcast last time did not turn the whole election, and the Klimaliste did not win.
No, but genuinely I am devastated about. Like, it's very sad, and I really hope that they just keep going. Anyway,
it's very surprising because our guest Izzy, who was brilliant, she did make clear that we're probably all going to die.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd vote. You'd think people would listen to that and vote. But then,
But yeah.
Maybe I'm overestimating our reach.
I think so. I think also I've sort of had to have a shift in how I've analysed this week, in that I was very depressed on Monday because obviously speaking to Izzy and reading the Klimaliste stuff and just knowing kind of and understanding what's happening in the world, we really needed it to go, and maybe people had hoped because the Greens were polling so well, and we were all caught up in Berlin in the sort of Klimaliste energy. It would have been amazing if it had been much more radical, and it wasn't.
No, not only that, the people, did you know this? The constituency where all the flooding happened.
Oh, fuck me, absolutely. Well, this is the other thing.
They all voted CDU. All those people.
I'm sorry, that man laughed at them. And I'm talking about Armin Laschet getting in trouble for laughing in the background of a televised speech.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that constituency. I know it was the one, you remember there was a picture of that sort of massive sinkhole?
Yeah.
Do you remember that one picture where they looked like someone had just scooped out a big piece of the landscape because there was so much flooding that there was a kind of a landslide.
And they wrote CDU.
And they all just voted CDU.
Fair enough. This is the other thing. Sometimes I think... And then I sort of had to have this shift and started trying to look at positives in the election, because just I think for the sake of our collective mental health, we can't just constantly be upset. I can't really be upset about, everything all the time.
No.
We've got to look for small changes, and then hopefully that will give us enough energy to keep going forward.
Yeah.
So...
Do you know what... keep me going forward?
Megacan, yes, I'm segueing slowly into this. I was trying to find, I've got us 2 Lynchburg lemonades, which are icy cold, and I was trying to find, they're not my favorite Mega, but they're not the thing. They're sort of sweet and fine. Probably, if we look so much into the history of Lynchburg lemonade, deeply problematic, but we're not going to do that. And they were also, and this is the spirit of my election analysis, of the ones available in your Späti at this time of day, best of a bad bunch.
Okay.
So here you go. Happy
Brilliant.
Friday.
Thank you. I was secretly hoping you were going to bring a Lynchburg lemonade.
Oh, that's good. Maybe it's really the best for you.
Well, it's not my favourite, but it's I was thinking that I like it, and we haven't had it for a while.
I did ask you for a request, but you were like, the surprise is part of the show, and I was like, yeah, but I feel like I've thrust horror on you without your consent a little while. Okay.
Cheers.
That's good. That is actually a delicious Mega.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. It's
that's first sip.
That's the first.
Do you remember the first sip a couple of weeks ago of that cannabis drink? I thought I was gonna die. If you've got a good first sip on your Mega, you're on to a winner.
Do you know, it's also fitting because it is lemonade as a citrus fruit. And do you know what they've been calling the sounding out negotiations between the Greens and the FDP?
No, something more complicated than what you just said for me to remember in my head, no doubt, because This is getting nuts, Germany.
So the FDP and the Greens are currently in Sondierungsgespräche, which means like preliminary negotiations.
Yeah. Do we want to give a quick rundown? Because literally people might not know.
Exploratory talks. And,
but also who won? What were the election results?
Yeah, but I just wanted to explain the citrus connection first.
Okay, do that.
Because they've been saying they're the citrus talks because it's like yellow and green, like lemon and lime. Okay, we can move on. I was
going to let you come back to that. Okay. I had a horrible feeling where it was going, and it was. God in heaven, Germany.
Right. So there was an election, and the SPD won it with Olaf Scholz. You probably already heard that. We're probably not telling you anything new. You never know. For someone, it's not often we can give the cold hard facts and know what we're talking about. Actually, it might be news to my brother. He might. These are the people I'm thinking about. Yes, I mean, I don't want to name names. But he might actually listen to that, going, "Oh, that's interesting. That's believable." Right. So that was about a week ago. Would you like to hear the actual results, the percentages? Are you interested? Oh. I think I might know them. Okay. So, I want to say that the SPD were like 25.9 or something. Close, yeah, 25.7. Not bad. And then the CDU, shockingly close behind on 24 point something. Yeah, 24.1. And then the Greens on 16. 14.8. Not bad. And FDP, FDP, yes. FDP. Yeah. Fuck. FDP. I'm sort of having a stroke. 12% in and around. 11.5. That'll do. Round up. And in fifth place was the AfD, unfortunately. On 10.3. Yeah. And then Die Linke just sneaked into the Bundestag. They were on 4.9%, but then they got 3 direct candidates, which pushes them in that bit of the vote that I don't understand, but they are in the Bundestag. But a shocking. Do you know who those 3 direct candidates are? They're in Berlin, including Gregor Gysi. Gregor Gysi. This is a lot of shout outs to Basti's fandom here. Yeah, it was only because of that they got in, and now what happens is that because they have 3, it was 3 is the minimum you've got to get, and if you get those 3. Then they count your second votes, and they give you proportionally to the number of second votes you got. They give you that many seats. So the Linke got 3 direct candidates, but they're actually going to have 39 seats in Parliament. Okay. Bit complicated, that. I did see a sort of headline. I didn't read the whole article, but basically they're having to put up a load of containers to house offices for the new Bundestag members, because it's how many are there now? How many are there going to be in this? 735. That's too many. It's the biggest ever. The last one was 709. This is insane. Yeah, it's getting a little bit. It's all because of overhang mandates, and it's all happening because there are more and more parties in Parliament, and they're having to compensate. I'm going to get it wrong now. Literally no one understands this. I will buy a fucking slab of megas for someone who can explain this to me in a way that makes me understand it, because it's insane. Right, so what happens is you get loads of first time. You get the first votes is for your direct candidate, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then those are definitely in because they're direct candidates. So those guys are definitely in. Yeah. And then because you also get seats proportional to your second votes, which are it's the proportional representation part of the votes. The CDU and the SPD benefit from it, and that's why they don't want to change this rule. And that's why the parliament keeps getting bigger, because the CDU and SPD get extra seats because they have so many direct candidates already. There's something to do with that. But anyway, the other parties all want to. Well, the Greens and the FDP and the Linke always want to change this rule, and just for form's sake, because it's ridiculous, because it's getting so big, and because it costs a lot of money, but also just and so they always want to change it, but the CDU and the SPD don't want to change it because they're more likely to get more direct candidates, so it benefits them. That's basically why it is. That's why it keeps growing, and it's because also now we've got more and more parties in Parliament now that the AfD have joined it.
and the FDP are regularly in Parliament, and the Linke, it means that we have a lot of we have like regularly have 6 different parties in the Parliament, and we also have there's as a side note, there's like one candidate who got in directly from the Danish minority in Schleswig-Holstein. They had like a special rule because they're like a minority there, that they can have one candidate. I don't want to go, but it's the like.
I mean, that sounds reasonable, but that's 700. That's a lot of people to organize and get. Right. Okay. So that's what happened, and then obviously it's ongoing because Germany always has like a coalition. So now we have to go into the not quite the coalition talks, but the Sondierungen.
Yeah,
the sounding out.
The exploratory talks. It's
exploratory talks, and this is where we have the citrus, because the Greens, in my understanding, the Greens and the FDP have to kind of form a coalition with either the SPD, and that would give us the Ampel or traffic light coalition, or they go with the CDU, which would give us the Jamaica coalition.
It was obvious that even though they had the numbers, so the CDU, we could have had a grand coalition again, like we've had the last 2 times, and then there was a slim majority for that. They had enough votes, but there was absolutely no appetite for that from either party, from either the CDU or the SPD, or generally the electorate. Like, no one wants that, because it would mean that Scholz would be chancellor with the CDU as the junior partner. And that would be like, the CDU would feel like they've humiliated by
lost an election.
Yeah, it was so to do
well,
with
we couldn't have
hurt their pride.
That.
And the other thing is that that you know, like, they made this big thing about young voters should be included. So what has happened now is that the Greens and the FDP are getting together first to decide what points they definitely want to have in the government contract. It's called a contract that they then sign. As a coalition contract.
Okay.
So they will get together and decide what policies they definitely want to have in that contract, and then they will go like, come on then, CDU, SPD, which of you will give us the most of these points, sort of thing, you know?
Oh. So they make like a sort of list, and then they go to mummy and daddy and see which one's likely to.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay,
and at the moment, it seems like the SPD, because the CDU is internally now is in disarray, because they don't like their own candidate, because it would mean that Armin Laschet would be chancellor, and even the CDU don't want that. Can
we have a moment for Armin Laschet? So obviously, when we were covering on the podcast the whole leadership race, and the choice was basically him or Söder or Merz, Merz being a real villain of the podcast, Söder being Söder, and we were like, yay, Armin Laschet, cool, best of a bad bunch. I didn't know Armin Laschet that well. That was really the first I've heard of it, apart from he wanted to come out of lockdown, and I wasn't too keen on that.
Yeah.
How has he got to this position? He's so awful.
Everyone hates him.
Everyone hates him. I'm baffled by how these decisions have been made.
With the decision of why did they let him run for chancellor, or
why has anyone ever given that man a job in the history of anything, let alone the biggest party in the biggest power of Europe, going, he might be the lad to replace a massive political like behemoth like Merkel. The CDU is not okay. So
it's a conundrum.
The whole, I don't know. I can't understand white men and their things, what they get up to. So what I've been hearing is that, because I watched the so-called elephant round, which is a rather nice sort of civilized German thing that happens after an election that I've never watched before, where all of the leaders of the main parties sit around as the election results come in, and in a relatively civilized manner, in fact a very civilized manner compared to US or UK counterparts, discuss the election and the forthcoming coalition things. I do think the coalition thing must help with that civilized thing, because they do sort of, it's like power sharing rather than, anyway, and the proportional representation, I don't think you could do that in a first past the post thing, because it's just so bitter and unfair. My point is, the FDP and the Greens kept being like, despite our differences, despite we have these real differences, we're going to come together and talk. So how do you feel like these talks are going to go? Is it weird? Are they going to be able to come to an agreement?
Well,
Are they that different? Who knows?
Well, the FDP and the Greens?
Yes.
Yeah, well, according to this study that I read, and it said that the Greens and the FDP have actually come closer together in the last 4 years than many people noticed. They analysed the election manifestos of the two parties, of all the parties, and they were just sort of pointing out, they kind of did these individual analysis of each one, and they said compared to 4 years ago, they've changed they've emphasized this slightly differently, or they've taken out this policy point that was in there before, if replaced it with some wishy-washy language, it was a lot of things like that.
Okay.
And one of the things they noticed, especially with the Greens, was they've taken out a lot of the stuff that makes them sound too left-wing in the manifesto. Things
it's
like
the point that you've raised before, and I think everyone's sort of...
It's sort of stuff like, workers' rights. They took out that a little bit more.
Who needs workers' rights?
Anything that kind of sounds like they want to ban stuff, because they get really bad press in Germany for being the party that wants to ban things. It was a big thing 4 years ago. It was a big thing was when they said they wanted to ban meat. They wanted to have a vegetarian day in canteens of public institutions. So any public institution would have a vegetarian only day, and this was a big thing.
How dare people try and make me eat vegetables in order that our children might see their children into adulthood?
So someone in the Green Party 4 years ago floated this idea, and the Bild Zeitung just went mad with it, and just like, the Green Party is the party of bans. So they got really burnt by this, the Green Party. So now they softened a lot of those kinds of policies in their manifesto. And they're much more open to investing in, green technology. That's just like a big thing, and let the market work something out.
Oh,
this is I should mention the analysis. It's
I hate it when you give me details.
Berlin Social Center is what I'm quoting here. This is the Berlin Social Science Center, WZB. This is their analysis. So they were pointing out, it's quite interesting, that they've kind of edged a little bit closer, because on the other side, the FDP has become much more interested in climate change. They mention it much more often in their manifesto.
I would question your wording there. They've become much more interested in climate change.
Well, yeah.
Do you think they actually are, or are they just talking more about climate change because they realize it's a big thing?
Yeah, they have to, because they do have a younger membership, and so it is an issue for young people. So it's all to do with, they're all into like carbon trading, and it's nothing to do with, they actually have the least ambitious carbon neutrality target. I mentioned this in the last podcast, that they want to go carbon neutral by 2050, which is 10 years after.
By which time Christian Lindner will have made his millions and will be too old and bald to be pulling the young chicks, so he won't care anymore.
Yeah, so they want to do like a lot of emissions trading, where the Green Party are a little bit more, we really should not have petrol cars for very much longer because they're really bad, and things like that.
Impending apocalypse.
Yeah,
I cannot say this strongly enough.
So anyway, they have and also they have quite similar voters. Like, their voters are often like people who like urban people who live in cities, younger people, and more likely to be university educated are Green and FDP voters. They do have similar demographics like that.
Yeah.
They're not like the out in the countryside old people voters.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting, the list. And it was interesting for me because I've been doing a big politics project with my older class, with the other English teacher. And they made their own political parties and everything. And they were amazing. And they were like so much better than most politicians. But anyway, we were talking about the election results, and a lot of them. So one of the interesting statistics was that the first-time voters, the parties that they chose were the Greens. Actually, the FDP, mostly, I think, Bundesweit, followed just quite closely afterwards by the Greens. And I was discussing this with the class, and they're all pretty like politically engaged, and they were, most of them, first-time voters. There's a few that could only vote in the Bezirk because they're not 18 yet. And I was like, well, why do you think, first of all, maybe more young people are getting involved with politics and voting? And there does seem to be, the voter turnout was pretty high to my mind, or certainly compared with, I don't know, like political engagement whenever I was their age. And I said, well, why is that? And why do you think it was the Greens and the FDP? And they said, climate change. All of them say climate change. They're very concerned about that. However, I sort of wonder sometimes, because they are young and, you know, they are only 18, so they've got like a high school understanding, sometimes very in-depth, sometimes really good, but often just a kind of conceptual understanding that climate change is a big thing. So they see the Green Party and they go, oh, they're the Greens, they're for climate, I'm going to vote for them. And I don't mean that in like in a patronizing way. That's just like they've got other things to do. You know, they shouldn't have to, like, you know, if a party says they're green, then it's not really on the 18-year-olds to go and be like, oh, well, hang on, is this like neoliberal green? Like not really green?
Yeah.
And the other thing is digitalization. And that is FTP's buzzword.
Oh, yeah.
And I can totally understand. And one student made a very good comment. He was like, the thing is, for the first time, like particularly with Corona, like these are the first Corona, there are pandemic abitur kids. And they said for the first time, we really saw how political decisions were impacting us like directly.
Oh, yeah.
And like that I thought was quite, you know, cool. Like it wasn't really conceptual anymore. They could see what the government were deciding and in the different Bundeslands and how their exams were maybe different than other, you know, all of that. And so much of us teachers having to explain, we have to make you wear your masks now all the time, even in your exams, because of the government, you know. And I think that was interesting. So I'm rambling slightly now. My point was, that is why they thought Greens and FDP, I think.
Well, the FDP made a big thing out of the COVID lockdown measures, and they made that an issue because one of the FDP's big founding principles, is this sort of freedom, you know, and that's why a lot of people are theorizing that because they made this issue and because they could attach it to one of their founding principles, that they could offer like a clear ideological reason why freedom should be like an important thing,
rather than it just being like we don't like, you know, like a Corona leugner thing.
Yeah, and young people are like really affected by the lockdown, but less affected by the virus itself, right? Because they're not less likely to die. So they're like probably thinking, why do we have to do all this?
Yeah, and yet they do it, and they're great, and they don't mind like that part of it. They just, anyway, I just hope that the FDP like to talk a lot about. It's interesting, like talking about putting more money and stuff into schools, and so that people can get out of their like the social class or the area in which they're born into. I was watching some interview with Linda, and obviously digitalization. There's a lot of kids that are rightly very angry about being in one of the richest countries in Germany and then going into lockdown and having to suffer way, way more than other countries because nothing is fucking digitalized and everything is so fucking antiquated.
Also, do you think this is a lot of old Linker people were saying that this is also because they've been so socialized by capitalism and that they have no concept of the state trying to make, you know, like state safety nets trying to make the life better for people. They're more likely to be individualists because they've been educated that way by the society that we live in. Maybe.
I think they just hear digitalization. They're young. They're 18. They hear digitalization, and I think it's hard for us to understand. We do all are like addicted to our devices and stuff to an extent, but like for young people, I hate this term, but like the digital natives, like it is an extension of their person, their digital life. Like that's just true for many of them, not all.
So they live in it, yeah. It's but like they live in a digital world.
The fucking FDP, man, you want to get all those new voters, that's fine, but you were also the ones trying to open up the schools and have teachers teach behind a lectern with plexiglass. So you best, you know, you want to get those young people on side by talking about that, then that's fine. But anyway, I am skeptical. Anyway, that was a long ramble for me. I haven't had very much to eat yet, and I'm like today, and I've tanked this Megacan. Okay. So what do you think? What's your money on? Konrad?
A traffic light.
Ample.
Yeah, we'll probably get a traffic light just because the CDU is so internally divided and they all hate Laschet. I think they're really unlikely to try and get him in. Also because Söder and Merz, they know what's going on, right? And it's not in their interest particularly to have Laschet as Chancellor. That's what's internally.
They want to sneak in 4 years' time.
Yeah. They're thinking, well, like, you know, he's really unpopular. Why should we support him? It's only going to damage us. And if he's not chancellor, he'll just be a backbencher, and then we'll have a good chance in 4 years' time of being the chancellor candidate.
I did see a very funny tweet, and I've tried to say this joke to Germans, particularly my German students, and they didn't really get it. But I think for all the migrants living here, it was like, you realise that if we have a traffic light coalition, Germany will be ruled by its most revered institution, the traffic light. Which is a joke for anyone who's ever tried to cross the road on red living in Berlin, even though there's nothing coming. Right, Berlin.
Good.
We also had state election in Berlin.
Okay.
So, what happened there?
Well, early in the evening, people got very excited because the very first exit poll had the Greens ahead. And people thought, oh my God, we're going to have a Green mayor for the first time ever. And then it didn't happen. The lead melted away overnight, and Giffey won quite handily and she's the new SPD mayor. Now she can choose basically any party she likes to do a coalition with. And that is slightly interesting because her natural leanings would seem to be towards a sort of CDU type coalition, a grand coalition. But I think that her party, the SPD membership, especially in Berlin, is more likely to want a green. You cannot
in 2021 go into, as a Berlin mayor, go into coalition with the CDU. Like, I just don't think you can.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be quite well.
She's already CDU enough. She's CDU light. Why is she even in the SPD? What's going on?
So, do you want to hear the results? SPD won with 21.4%. The Greens close behind on 18.9%, followed by the CDU on 18.1%, followed by Die Linke at 14%, followed by the AfD on 8%. The AfD lost nearly a half of their vote share.
Go on, Berlin.
They really got they lost. They're the biggest losers in the Berlin election.
They are the biggest losers. Full stop. There we go.
Yeah, and so it's going to be one. And the other thing that happened, of course, at the same time, you could also vote on the Deutsche Wohnen Enteignen Volksbegehren.
Yeah.
Which won by 56%.
Woo!
And over a million people voted. Very loud. Over a million people voted yes, which in a city of, just under 4 million is a lot of people, you'd think.
Yeah, and when you consider how disenfranchised people, myself, would have voted, then fucking yes.
Exactly. And
I was saying the other day, I was like, if they enfranchise all the migrants, no one will have private property in Berlin.
Well, they do like theoretical votes.
Yeah, they do.
For people, like they do polls and stuff for what would migrants and other disenfranchised people vote across the country. And like the Greens and the Linke would win those elections. Yeah. Anyway, so
we have to see what Giffey decides to do.
She already said before the election that she's against the Enteignung. Right. And she even made it a coalition red line before the election. She even said before the election, I will not join a coalition with a party that makes that condition. So she's put a lot of pressure on herself, but of course she is herself under a lot of pressure now because this was a big vote and it won, so.
Yeah, 56% is not nothing.
I mean, I don't know. She's already talking about building on Tempelhofer Feld as well, even though there was a referendum for that.
Like, fuck off.
Well, we won. There was a referendum for that a few years ago.
Yeah, well, there was a referendum on Tegel a few years ago. And anyone flying out of Tegel these days? No.
So, we'll have to see. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there.
Maybe she won't be mayor.
I would be a fool to make a prediction.
SPD politician. If you listen to Berliner Rundfunk, which is the boomer radio station of Berlin, which I do love, hits of the 70s, 80s and 90s, they have a ex-mayor of Neukölln, Karl Tukowski, something like that, and he was saying that Giffey, he thinks she might not be mayor.
Buschkowski. Heinz Buschkowski you're talking about.
Am I?
I think
his name was Karl.
Oh, who are you talking about?
Ex-mayor of Berlin. They call him a
No.
Klartexter. I
Sorry,
hate him.
I got it mixed up.
I don't hate him. That's an awful thing to say.
I was thinking of the ex-mayor of Neukölln.
That's who I'm talking about. Is it Heinz? I thought it was Karl.
There's a guy called Heinz Buschkowski who was mayor of Neukölln before Giffey was.
Yeah,
and he's
I think
also
that's who I'm talking
SPD,
about.
but he was like, I mean, I lived in Neukölln when he was mayor, and he's just a dick.
Oh, he's a total dick. Yeah, that must be him. But he was saying, yeah, he's like their Klartexter, their straight talker that comes on Thursdays. I can't abide him. But he was saying that maybe Giffey won't be mayor. But
yeah, he doesn't like her. He said that she's like, oh, she's so ambitious.
well, he's probably just misogynist, but also,
Possibly,
yeah, probably not wrong.
Right.
I told Giffey, 'cause she's got that weird, anyone who's seen her photo shoot for like any of her pictures for the election are just this kind of soccer mom, lacquered hair. Her voice is just... Anyway, I am determined, for the sake of our collective mental health, as I said previously, did it radically go the way? Didn't? No. Do we still need to be voting differently and enfranchising migrants and maybe holding green candidates to account who are actually just neoliberals in disguise? Yes. However, good news from this election, there definitely is.
Okay.
What is our roundup? I think it is, if we get the Ampel, that is something new. To have the CDU in the opposition is cool.
Yeah.
And also, let us not forget, it was slightly overshadowed, and I know someone who was at the SPD election party, and even though they won, she said it was super subdued because they thought they were going to do a lot better. But let us not forget, everyone, that the CDU had their worst ever election result.
Oh, yeah.
And
They got wiped out.
try and... We could say it's all to do with Armin Laschet, but we don't know.
No,
Because
I mean,
people are supposed to go out and vote the CDU no matter what. And maybe that is changing.
I don't know if you remember the 97 election in the UK. Do you remember that? When Tony Blair won?
Well, considering how shit I am at knowing politics at the age of 35, when I was 11... No, I do. That was the, like, Tony Blair...
Yeah, it was the new Labour. It was when people were setting off fireworks every time a Tory cabinet minister lost his seat. There was a big deal. Like there was a big thing when Michael Portillo lost his seat.
Yeah.
And people were very excited. And there was except for the fact that we have proportional representation in Germany, but 4 CDU cabinet ministers failed to win their direct seats.
Whoop whoop!
So
Give us the rundown. I think I know this.
Okay.
AKK.
Yeah.
That's the only one.
Defense minister.
Yeah, she lost her seat. Former leader, brief leader of the CDU, let us not forget. I'm glad she lost. That's karma for her making me take 3 weeks to learn how to say her name and then fucking stepping down.
And now losing a seat.
Sorry, I don't mean that. I'm sorry, Akaka. I'm sure you're a lovely person, but you're CDU, so.
I'll be amazed if you got the others.
Maassen wasn't part of the cabinet, was he?
No, but that was really good news too.
Because he's a bad boy.
Yeah, you were talking about Hans-Georg Maassen, the former head of the Verfassungsschutz,
Who embroiled in many scandals for being a fucking racist.
and he was standing as a candidate in Thuringia for the CDU, and he was deliberately trying to drag the CDU further to the right. He was trying to get AfD voters.
Yeah, because they've got Hooker down there, who's my least favourite person on the planet.
And it would have, and he was really being anti-immigrant, and he got filmed by the Spiegel TV hanging out with proper neo-Nazis as well.
Fuck you, Maassen.
So anyway, he lost.
I'm sorry, he's a former head of the Yeah. Everyone needs to get out of the Verfassungsschutz. Maybe not everyone, but they need to.
Well, he came third in his seat in his thing behind the SPD and the AfD. So anyway, so he lost. That was really good because I'm really scared that if he won, I think the CDU would have thought, okay, that's a good way of getting votes, and we'll go more right wing. But he didn't. No, the others were. I mean, they're not really important. But Julia Klöckner, Agriculture Minister, head of the CDU in Rheinland-Pfalz, I think.
Okay.
Helge Braun, who was Merkel's chief of staff. and he was a minister for special things. He was like he was like, that was his job. Like they wanted to give him a cabinet post because he was so loyal, and they gave him just a job like for minister for special affairs, something like that. Anyway, he lost.
Jesus Christ. Because people were like, son, what do you actually do?
Yeah, he was like just hanging around.
I have to go to work every day and do this boring thing that I don't want to do. What is it you're doing? Favors for Merkel because she likes you? Fuck you. We're not voting you in. What else?
Right, so that was that. Oh yeah, and other good news. It was this is the most. They're saying this is the most diverse Bundestag ever now.
Good.
In terms of people of migrant background.
Age, I think, as well, quite young.
Yeah,
youngish,
a lot of young people.
Young compared to the...
Yeah, a lot of the SPD people are young.
Yeah, I heard that.
They from the Users, the Young Socialists. Also, what is interesting is that the Greens won a lot of direct candidates, which they haven't won for a long time. Where we are now is the only direct place in Germany which had a direct Green candidate, and now there's about 15 or 16 direct Green candidates, including a couple of immigrant background in Frankfurt. Omid Nuripur, who's of Iranian descent, he's pretty famous, but he won. He was already in the Bundestag, but he won his seat outright, direct candidate. So that was a big deal.
I wish I understood this so I could congratulate him fully from my heart, but I still don't.
Karamba Diaby, he's the SPD candidate in Halle. He's really popular there, which is nice because it's Halle,
yeah.
And yeah, so it's two
trans women.
Two trans women.
Tessa Gansera, and I'm going to say this wrong. Nika Slavic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do we know their constituencies?
No. You didn't? I didn't know you were going to ask me that.
Yeah. Also, particularly in Berlin, but also Bundesweit, the AfD went down. Woo.
Yeah. So there were three big loser parties in this election, compared to the last election, which were obviously the CDU was the big one. They lost, compared to the last election, they lost 8.8% of the vote that they had before. The Linke lost a lot, and the AfD went down from 12% to 10%.
And in Berlin, it halved.
And in Berlin, they lost like
everyone in Berlin can go and have a celebratory mega or chips or kebab or something.
So that's good.
And we have Deutsche Wohnen enteignen.
Which
we will see. But like so many people, like I have not been walking about in Berlin, even sort of during the pandemic, out on the cold Telperhoffelfeld. People in those like yellow and purple vests. Like I sort of overheard a lot of things, like people who couldn't even vote volunteering their time for that movement. And regardless of what happens, that 56% plus all of the other signatures that they collected from people like me who are not allowed to vote, but they collected them anyway. That stands sort of in history as a point of Berlin. This is what we're saying. Come on.
Yeah, sort it out.
Sort it the fuck out.
So more people voted yes than voted SPD, Green and CDU combined.
That's a mental statistic. And I think it's really interesting because regardless of where people's political things were sort of lying, they still are like, hey, we don't want these big.
I know, because people
can't live anymore. Can you imagine like if all of the, like if the Berlin sort of politicians in the SPD were really putting their like the social part of the Social Democrats and anything, I'm like, hey, is this weird that people get to profit off Berliners' right to have an apartment? Like people who don't even live in Berlin, who've never been here, whose names we don't know and who owns what and nobody knows. That's probably weird. And maybe they'll be forced to come up with their own policies, because I know that people have their criticism, Deutsche Wohnen enteignen, and whether that will actually kind of happen, but something needs to be done. And they took this massive stand, and I'm very grateful that they did.
Right.
I'm drunk now.
Well,
I'm quite happy
lovely.
For possibly the first time ever finishing this show. Not really.
Well, I think we should finish there in case before we ruin the mood.
Woo! I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Ish. Like we said, best of a bad bunch. But you know, we could have had Lasha as Chancellor, and we probably won't.
Yeah, probably won't. I'd be surprised now at this stage.
Fuck, we fucking knock on wood. Knock on wood. No, Konrad, knock on wood.
Oh, sorry.
All right, and with that, we wish you a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Yeah.
Have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye. That was very professional. Was it? I don't know. Who knows?
It was good.
It was professional.
Stop.